When my father died, the clothes in his closet were rags. You couldn't have given him the Goodwill. The only thing decent was this jacket from the Elk Volunteer Fire Department that they made him buy. It's mine now, I treasure it. My dad was a cheap Charlie. Now, what's a cheap Charlie? I learned that my first week in Vietnam. The guys who'd been there longer took me out to show me Saigon. We went to a girly bar. That was almost any bar in Saigon. Vietnam was a poor country. Some girls made their money by selling their bodies. The smarter ones, the better looking ones, some of them, made their living by selling the promise, the hope of their body. These were the girls that worked in the bars. Here's how it worked. You walk in a bar. A girl comes over and puts her hand on your name and says, "What's your name?" My name was Sam when I was in Vietnam. Sam. Sam, you buy me drink. You buy me tea. What she meant by that was you buy me a Saigon tea. Saigon tea cost $4 at the official rate. A lot of money. She got half of it, the bar got half of it. Might have been a good deal for the GIs who had no hope of feminine company in Saigon. We generally didn't want it. So we'd say, no want tea. She'd say, "You cheap Charlie." And I was a cheap Charlie. Sometimes if they were persistent, we could get a little cruel. She'd come over, put her hand on my knee and say, "You buy me tea. What's your name?" I'd say, "Larry Revolver." Larry Revolver? Close. Larry Revolver. Larry Revolver? And me and my buddies would laugh a little bit, and she'd get mad and go away and leave us alone. Now, these girls weren't smart. They knew their business, and they knew who was who. One time, one of them come up and said, "You buy me tea." I said, "No have money." "Why no have money?" "No payday." She looked me up and down. She said, "Bullshit! You civilian, no have payday. Have money all the time." And she was pretty much right. Now, the amazing thing was that we were egregiously overpaid, we working for IBM in Vietnam, and the girls were rather poor. Despite that, some of the guys hooked up with girls who kept them perpetually broke. These guys never had a piastre to spend. I didn't know what to feel, whether to feel pity for the guys who let themselves be taken like that, or admiration for the girls who were so clever at vacuuming the money out of their pockets. There were times when being a cheap Charlie wasn't a good idea. If you parked your car in a strange neighborhood, there'd be a whole flock of young boys show up and say, "I watch, I watch, I watch, I watch." And it was a good idea to pay the I watch boys, because if you didn't, your antenna might be bent, or your mirrors might be missing, or your hubcaps, or the whole car might be gone. Wisdom was you pay the I watch boy, and you use certain Toastmasters techniques. You make eye contact. Out of the sea of faces, you pick one somewhat larger and responsible-looking boy. You say, "What's your name?" You say, "Hong. Me name Hong." "Hong, you I watch boy number one." "Yes." So you make a deal. "Hong, you watch car." And you go away and do your business, and you come back, and with great ceremony, you give Hong the equivalent of about 50 cents, and say, "Hong, you I watch boy number one, So mo. And Hong beams in the recognition from the round-eyed stranger. And next time you come back to that neighborhood, you're in good shape, especially if you remember to ask for Hong, I Watch Boy number 1. Another time it didn't pay to be particularly cheap was in the market. I love the markets in Saigon. I love the markets here in Kiev. So I'd go in and bargain with the ladies, but they knew their stuff, and they knew that I didn't. I remember one time bargaining for bananas. There's about 10 types of bananas in Vietnam, at least. The kind that you want is called a Chuy Chin. That means a sweet banana. Well, I looked at a whole bunch of bananas, which all looked about the same to me, and I said, how much is this? Bao Nhu Tam, Bao Nhu Tam, Bao Nhu. And I chose one of the less expensive bananas. I didn't want to be overcharged for bananas. And I took it home and peeled it. It looked like a banana. I took a bite. It tasted like chalk. Ugh. It turned out that I had bought something called a Kai Mei De, which means a plantain. Some of you with a Latin background will know these as platanos. The secret of a platano is you have to cook it before you can eat it. You have to fry it, generally. That's why they were cheaper. Anyhow, I learned my lesson, and I paid full price, and I did okay. And I carried that lesson over here in Kiev, Ukraine. Now, sometimes my wife thinks I should be not so much of a cheap Charlie. I go to Tanya, my lady for fruits and vegetables, and she thinks I get taken by Tanya, paying too much. But actually, I usually get pretty good produce and fruits. And more than that, Tanya, if she has some leftover cucumbers or tomatoes or bell peppers, will give them to me in the knowledge that I'll make pickles or pizza sauce or pilaf out of it. So, yes, I do pay full freight for the stuff that's fresh, but I get stuff that I can use for free. I think it balances out. At other times, Oksana thinks I'm too much of a cheap Charlie, particularly when it comes to nuts. She has a taste for rather expensive nuts, for cashews, almonds, pecans, which cost on the order of 700 hryvnia per kilo. That's quite expensive, a few dollars. I prefer to encourage my son Eddie, our son Eddie, to eat popcorn and sunflower seeds and peanuts, which cost about 1/10 as much. So there's this constant tension, but I make sure that I always have a lot of the cheap stuff in the cupboard, and generally that's what gets eaten. See, my hope is that Eddie will give me grandchildren. And I hope when his time comes that he will leave his grandchildren the same kind of legacy that, or his children, the same kind of legacy that I got from my father. And my father did it by being a cheap Charlie. So I want to teach Eddie how to be a cheap Charlie.